Caleb did not hear the laughter at first. He felt it, the way conversations bent around him, the way a woman in a red coat pulled her kid a little closer when he sat down on the bus, like exhaustion might be contagious. His reflection in the scratched window looked older than 32. Beard uneven. Eyes bloodshot from the night shift. A grease stain on the sleeve of his jacket he had tried to wipe off with a wet paper towel in the gas station bathroom. He caught a faint smell of himself when the bus jerked to a stop. Metal, sweat, warehouse dust. Across the aisle, 2 college guys were talking about ski trips. One of them glanced at Caleb's boots, the cracked leather, the salt lines from too many winters. Caleb looked down at his phone like he had somewhere important to be. He did not. He was riding 4 hours north because his older brother had texted that he could stay for a bit if he needed. For a bit, that party sat heavy. The bus rolled into the suburban park and ride just after noon. Clean air, quiet streets, houses with wide driveways and trimmed hedges that looked like someone cared how they were judged. Caleb stood on the sidewalk with his duffel bag at his feet, staring at the address on his phone. He almost called a motel instead, almost. Then, a black sport utility vehicle turned to the corner and slowed. Ryan leaned across the passenger seat, grinning like they were still kids sharing a bedroom. Caleb forced a smile and climbed in, suddenly aware of how small his life looked next to the inside of this car. Heated seats, new car smell, a digital dashboard that probably cost more than his rent. Ryan talked the whole drive about work, about listings, about a couple from Chicago buying a lake house without seeing it in person. Big moves, big numbers. Caleb nodded at the right moments, watching neat neighborhoods pass by, each house bigger than the last. When they pulled into the driveway, something twisted in his chest. The house was not huge, but it was solid. Fresh paint, clean windows. A porch with chairs that matched. Melissa opened the door before they reached it. She smiled wide. Her hug was quick, careful not to wrinkle her sweater. "Come in, you must be exhausted." The entryway smelled like citrus and something baking. Caleb stepped onto the hardwood and had the sudden, ugly urge to wipe his boots on the rug again, even though he already had. He followed them inside, carrying his bag like he was afraid of brushing the walls. Ryan clapped him on the back and said he could stay any time. Any time. Caleb nodded and said thanks. Melissa took his coat, 2 fingers pinching the collar where it was cleanest. They led him upstairs to the guest room. As they walked past a framed mirror on the landing, Caleb caught his reflection. Between his brother's straight posture and Melissa's polished smile, he looked like a before picture. And before he ever heard a single word behind his back, Caleb already felt like a problem that had walked in through the front door. By the time they went to bed, his shoulders ached from holding himself carefully. Dinner had been polite. Safe topics, weather, traffic, their mother's knee pain. Ryan talked about a difficult client. Melissa laughed at the right spots. Caleb laughed half a second late. He lay on top of the comforter that night, phone in hand, scrolling nothing. The house hummed with heat pipes and distant water in the walls. Around midnight he realized he had left his charger in the kitchen. He told himself it was fine. The battery still showed more than half. He did not want to go back downstairs, did not want to risk another awkward moment, another glance that slid over him like he was temporary. Sleep came in scraps, a truck backing up somewhere far away, the heater kicking on, a dream where he was late for work and his boots would not go on his feet. He woke just before 6 in the morning, throat dry, phone at 30%. He lay still, listening. Voices floated up through the vents. Ryan and Melissa were already awake. He swung his legs over the side of the bed slowly, wincing at the pop in his knee. He grabbed his phone and headed for the stairs, careful to miss the one step that creaked. Halfway down, he stopped. Melissa's voice. lower than usual, tight. She said they could not keep doing this. Caleb froze, hand on the railing. Ryan answered, quieter, saying it was just for a few days and that Caleb would be gone by the weekend. A pause. Melissa said Caleb was not stupid. A short laugh from Ryan, but there was no humor in it. He asked if she thought Caleb had the money or the brain to figure anything out. Caleb felt heat crawl up his neck. Melissa's voice again, sharper now. She said it was not about that. It was about boundaries. Every time Caleb came around, Ryan started feeling guilty and then started talking about helping him. Loans, co-signing, letting him stay. She said they could not afford another Caleb situation. Another Caleb situation. He swallowed, throat clicking. Ryan exhaled loudly and said he was not giving Caleb money. He just said he could crash there. Melissa said that was how it started. Chairs scraped faintly. Melissa lowered her voice, but it carried. She said they had worked too hard to get out of that mess, and she was not going back to living paycheck to paycheck because Ryan's little brother could not grow up. Something inside Caleb folded in on itself. He took a step back, meaning to retreat quietly, but his heel hit the stair behind him with a dull thud. Silence downstairs. Ryan called out, asking if Caleb was up. He forced his voice to work and said he was coming down. Each step felt like walking into a room already laughing at him. They were both at the kitchen island when he entered, coffee mugs in hand. Melissa's smile snapped on, bright and brittle. He said, "Morning." Ryan asked if he slept okay. Caleb said, "Yeah." Melissa moved around the kitchen with efficient motions. Eggs, toast, the smell of butter hitting the pan. Caleb watched her hands. Neat nails, thin gold ring. No tremor. No sign that she had just been talking about him like a recurring expense. Ryan talked about a showing later that day. A big house near the lake. Potential buyers from out of state. Caleb nodded at the right places. Inside, something was splitting along an old crack. After breakfast, Ryan left first. Melissa stayed behind loading dishes. Caleb stood awkwardly by the sink. She told him he did not have to clean and that he should relax because he must be exhausted. Relax. He mumbled thanks and retreated upstairs. In the guest room, he sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. The candle on the dresser looked smaller in daylight. Another Caleb situation. He pulled out his phone and opened his banking app. Balance low, again. He had been picking up extra shifts, but rent had gone up. Gas prices, too. His car needed brakes soon. The numbers did not stretch. He closed the app and rubbed his face hard. Maybe Melissa was right. Maybe he was just a problem that kept coming back around. Around 10, he decided to go for a walk. The neighborhood was quiet. Houses spaced far apart, lawns stiff with frost. He shoved his hands into his jacket pockets and kept his head down. He told himself he would not ask Ryan for anything. Not money, not help. He would stay 2 nights, thank them, and leave. He would not be another Caleb situation. When he got back near noon, a dark sedan was in the driveway, not Ryan's vehicle. Through the front window, he saw Melissa at the dining table with a man he did not recognize. Late 40s, maybe, suit jacket off, sleeves rolled up, papers spread between them. Caleb hesitated on the porch. He was just a guest. He went inside quietly. They both looked up. Melissa's smile appeared again, thinner this time. She introduced the man as someone who helped with their finances. Caleb nodded and headed for the stairs. Melissa asked him to give them a little privacy because they were going over some sensitive stuff. Sensitive. Heat prickled under his collar. Upstairs again, guest room, closed door. He lay back and stared at the ceiling. A few minutes later, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but answered. A woman's voice told him she was calling about an outstanding medical balance. His stomach dropped. He said he had set up a payment plan last year. She said the last payment was 3 months ago and the account was now past due. He closed his eyes. He said he had been working extra and could send something next week. She told him the balance was now over $8,000, and if they did not receive a payment by the end of the month, the account might be escalated. Escalated. He thanked her and hung up. $8,000. His chest felt hollow. He lay there a long time. Eventually, he got up to use the bathroom down the hall. As he passed the top of the stairs, he heard Melissa's voice again, louder now. She said she was not putting her name on that. A man answered calmly, likely the financial advisor. She snapped back that last time they trusted family, they got burned, and she was not risking their credit because Ryan felt bad for his brother. Caleb stopped moving. Ryan answered, frustration in his voice, saying he was not asking her to co-sign anything for Caleb. She said not yet, but he would because he always did. And that was how they ended up in debt the first place. Debt. Caleb gripped the railing. The man said they were not talking about Caleb right now. They were talking about the refinance. Refinance. Melissa sighed and said fine, then let them focus on that. Caleb stepped back into the hallway, heart racing. Refinance, debt. He remembered something Ryan had said the night before, half joking, about finally getting ahead and signing papers to consolidate everything. Everything. That afternoon, Ryan insisted Caleb ride along to a property showing. He said it would get Caleb out of the house. Caleb almost said no. But staying behind felt worse. The house was huge, glass walls, view of the lake, floors so clean they reflected light like water. A couple in their late 30s walked through with Ryan, dressed in quiet money clothes, soft fabrics, watches that did not need to shine. Caleb stayed near the kitchen island, hands in his pockets, trying not to touch anything. Ryan's voice shifted into work mode, confident, smooth. Melissa had come too, talking with the woman about schools and neighborhoods. Everything moved fast, polished, effortless. Then the man asked how long they had been in real estate. Ryan answered easily. Caleb smiled faintly from the edge of the room. The woman looked at him and asked who he was. Ryan hesitated just a fraction too long before saying Caleb was his brother who was visiting. The woman asked if Caleb was in the business too. Caleb shook his head and said he worked at a distribution warehouse. He saw it. The flicker. The fast mental sorting. Her smile shrank just a little. She said that must be physical. He said it kept him busy. The man nodded without really looking at him. Ryan quickly steered the conversation back to square footage and property taxes. Caleb drifted toward the back patio doors, staring out at the lake. Inside, laughter rose again, lighter now, flowing around him like he was part of the furniture. Then he heard it. Soft. Not meant for him, the woman whispering to Melissa near the hallway. She said Melissa was sweet to let him stay and that family could be complicated. Melissa let out a breath that was almost a laugh and said they had no idea. Caleb's stomach dropped. He stepped back too fast and bumped a small decorative table. A glass bowl wobbled and tipped, hitting the floor with a sharp crack. Everyone turned. Ryan's smile vanished. Caleb crouched immediately, hands shaking, saying he was sorry and that he did not see it. Ryan said it was fine, already kneeling to help, but his voice was tight. Melissa grabbed a towel, face flushed. The couple stood frozen for a second. Then the man said no worries, but his eyes had already shifted back to Ryan, recalculating. Caleb felt heat flood his face, neck, ears. He kept saying sorry, too many times, too loud, a grown man apologizing like a kid who broke something he could never afford to replace. On the drive home, the car was quiet. Ryan gripped the wheel. He said it was just a bowl. Caleb stared out the window. Just a bowl. But he knew that look. The one that said liability. The one that said wrong room. The one that said not one of us. And for the rest of the drive, Caleb did not feel like a guest. He felt like damage waiting to happen. That night, he could not sleep. Around 2 in the morning, he got up for water. The house was dark, except for a sliver of light under a door. At the end of the hall he had not noticed before. He moved closer, quiet on the carpet. Ryan's voice came through, low and strained. He said he knew they were behind and he was trying to close something big that month. A pause. He said his brother was not the issue. Caleb stopped breathing. Ryan said he told them he would handle it and just needed another 30 days. A faint voice came through a speaker. Ryan rubbed his face with both hands. He said he understood what foreclosure meant. Caleb stepped back, pulse roaring in his ears. Foreclosure. He slipped back to the guest room and shut the door. Everything he thought he knew about his brother's life tilted sideways. The next morning he woke with a dull headache and a decision forming. He could leave and pretend he never heard any of it. Or he could stop being just another Caleb situation. Downstairs, Ryan sat at the table, laptop open, dark circles under his eyes. Caleb asked if he was okay. Ryan forced a smile and said it was just work stuff. Caleb held his gaze and said he heard him last night. Ryan's fingers stilled on the keyboard. He did not ask what Caleb meant. He knew. Caleb said foreclosure quietly. Ryan closed his laptop slowly and asked how much Caleb heard. Caleb said enough. Ryan leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. He said they got in over their heads. The house was a stretch. Then Melissa's business slowed. Some deals fell through. They kept thinking the next month would fix it. Caleb listened, chest tight. He said he thought they were doing great. Ryan laughed once, hollow, and said so did everyone else. Caleb asked why he did not tell him. Ryan looked at him with tired eyes and said Caleb already felt bad about his own stuff and he did not want to add to it. Caleb swallowed. Ryan said Caleb was his brother. Caleb looked down at his hands and said he owed Ryan. Ryan waved it off and told him to forget that. Caleb said no. He said he heard Melissa too about not wanting another him situation. Ryan flinched and said she was stressed and scared. Caleb said he knew, but she was not wrong. Ryan opened his mouth, then closed it. Caleb said he had been drifting for years, always almost okay, never solid. Ryan said nothing. Caleb took a breath and said he could not fix their mortgage, but maybe he could stop being something they had to worry about. Ryan frowned and asked what he meant. Caleb pulled out his phone and said he had been at the warehouse 3 years, and supervisors kept telling him to apply for the logistics coordinator position, but he always said he was not ready. Ryan waited. Caleb said he was going to apply. Ryan blinked and said okay. Caleb said he was also going to call the community college that day to see what he needed to finish the certification he dropped. Ryan said he hated school. Caleb said he hated feeling like this more. Silence hung between them. Ryan nodded slowly and said that was a good idea. Caleb said he was also going to set up a real payment plan with the hospital on automatic and not skip months anymore. Ryan leaned forward and said Caleb did not have to prove anything to them. Caleb said maybe not, but he had to prove something to himself. Ryan reached across the table and squeezed his shoulder. For the first time since arriving, Caleb did not feel like furniture. Later that day he called the college. The advisor told him he needed 2 more classes. Night courses, manageable. He filled out the job application at the warehouse during his lunch break. Melissa watched him from the kitchen as he sat at the table, brow furrowed over his phone. She asked if he was working. He said yeah. She nodded and said that was good. There was less edge in her voice now. That evening, the 3 of them ate takeout on the couch, a movie playing that no one really watched. Melissa's foot bounced with nervous energy. Ryan checked his email twice. Caleb sat between them. quiet but not invisible. Later that night, Caleb could not sleep. Not because of shame this time, because his mind would not stop moving. The house was quiet, heater humming, pipes ticking softly in the walls. He sat on the edge of the guest bed, phone in his hands, reading the email again. Application received. 2 simple words. No promise, no miracle. Just a door that might open if he kept walking. He stood and went downstairs for water. The kitchen light was on low. Melissa sat at the table alone, laptop open, eyes tired. Papers spread around her. She looked up, surprised, and asked if she woke him. He said no. He poured water into a glass and leaned against the counter. He asked if she was working late. She gave a small laugh and said she was trying to make numbers behave. He nodded and said hard year. Her shoulders dropped a little. A quiet moment passed. Caleb looked at the papers. Spreadsheets, bills, notes in the margins. Not the life he had imagined for them. Not the perfect version. Just people trying not to sink. He cleared his throat and said he meant what he said earlier. She looked up. He said he would not ask Ryan for money. She studied him, measuring, then said okay. He said he got a call about his hospital bill. Her eyes softened a little and she said that sounded stressful. He said it was, and he was setting up automatic payments even if it hurt. She closed the laptop slowly and said that was responsible. He almost smiled and said he was trying something new, another pause. Not tense, just honest. Caleb set the glass in the sink and said if they ever needed help around the house with fixing things or yard work or anything, he wanted to help. She started to say he did not have to. He said he knew, but he wanted to. Something shifted in her face. She said they could use help with the fence in the back because one panel was loose. He nodded and said he would look at it tomorrow. He turned to go back upstairs. She said thank you quietly. 2 words. Simple. But this time they did not sound like charity. They sounded like balance. Upstairs, Caleb lay down again. The future was still uncertain. Ryan could still lose the house. He could still not get the promotion. Life could still hit hard. But for the first time, he was not waiting for someone else to fix him. And he was not pretending he was not broken either. He was just doing the next right thing. Quiet. Unseen. Real. His phone buzzed softly again on the nightstand. Another email. He picked it up, heart thudding. A supervisor from work had responded, asking him to come in early next week to talk about the coordinator role. Not a job yet, but not nothing. He stared at the screen, heart beating steady. Not another Caleb situation. Just Caleb. Trying. The next morning, the air felt sharper, colder. Caleb stepped into the backyard with a travel mug of coffee and a pair of borrowed work gloves Ryan dug out from the garage. The fence panel Melissa mentioned leaned inward at an angle, one hinge half torn from the post. The wood was gray and splintered where the screws had ripped out. Nothing dramatic. Just something that had been loose for a while and no one had gotten around to fixing. He liked that. Problems that stayed still long enough to be handled. He pressed the panel back into place with his shoulder and felt the old wood groan. His palm stung through the gloves. Inside the kitchen window, Melissa stood at the counter, phone to her ear, pacing slowly. Her free hand pinched the bridge of her nose. Caleb looked away. He unscrewed the bent hinge, set it on the patio table, and went to the garage for tools. The garage smelled like cardboard, motor oil, and cold air. Shelves lined the walls with plastic bins labeled in Melissa's neat handwriting. Holiday lights, camping gear, paper towels bought in bulk. Normal life. Stacked carefully. He found a small box of screws and a drill with a battery half charged. Back at the fence, he worked slowly, careful not to split the wood further. The sun crept higher, warming the back of his neck. When the new screws bit into the post and the hinge held firm, he stepped back and pushed the panel gently. It stayed. Not perfect, but solid. Melissa opened the back door. "Hey," he turned, a little out of breath. "Yeah." She stepped onto the patio, arms folded against the cold. "You did not have to do that first thing in the morning." He shrugged. "Could not sleep." She nodded, looking at the fence. "That has been bugging us for months." He wiped his hands on his jeans. Easy fix. She looked at him for a long second. "Thank you." He nodded once. "No problem." She hesitated, like she wanted to say more. Then her phone buzzed in her hand. Her face tightened again as she looked at the screen. She went back inside. Caleb stayed outside a moment longer, listening to the quiet of the neighborhood. A dog barked in the distance. A car door slammed. Someone's wind chimes clinked softly. Ordinary sounds. He felt oddly steady. Later that day, Ryan asked if Caleb could help move some boxes from the basement to the garage. "Just trying to clear space," Ryan said, not meeting his eyes. Caleb followed him downstairs. The basement was half finished. A couch, a small television, a treadmill with laundry draped over it. Stacks of storage bins along one wall. Ryan handed him a box. "Old paperwork. We can toss most of it." They carried boxes up the stairs in silence. On the third trip, Caleb noticed Ryan moving slower. One hand pressed briefly to his lower back. "You good?" Ryan nodded too fast. "Yeah, just tired." Caleb did not push. In the garage, they opened a few boxes to check before throwing things away. Old mail, manuals for appliances they did not own anymore. Bank statements. Ryan flipped through a stack, then paused. He pulled one sheet out and stared at it a second too long before shoving it back in. Caleb caught a glimpse of a red stamp across the top of the page. Past due. Ryan closed the box harder than he needed to. Trash. Caleb carried it to the bin at the curb. That afternoon, Caleb sat at the kitchen table again, laptop open this time. Ryan had offered to let him use it to fill out financial aid forms for school. The questions made his head hurt. Income, expenses, debt. He typed slowly, double-checking numbers. Melissa moved around the kitchen, quieter than usual. At one point, she set a small plate beside him. Apple slices with peanut butter. He looked up. "Thanks." She nodded and went back to the sink. Small things. But they landed. That evening, Ryan got a call during dinner and stepped outside to take it. Caleb and Melissa sat at the table in the low light over the stove. He chewed slowly, then said, "I am sorry about the other day." At the showing. She did not pretend not to know what he meant. She wiped her hands on a dish towel. It was just bad timing. He shook his head. "I felt like a kid." She looked at him. "You looked overwhelmed." He gave a short laugh. "Same thing." She leaned against the counter. "You know," she said carefully, "I was not embarrassed of you." He glanced up. "I was embarrassed of how fragile everything feels right now." He said nothing. She continued, "When you dropped that bowl, all I could think was, if this deal falls through too, what else breaks?" Her voice cracked just a little on the last word. Caleb looked down at his plate. "I did not know." She nodded. "I know." Ryan came back in then, face tight, forcing a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Everything okay?" Caleb asked. "Yeah," Ryan said too quickly. "Just work." They all pretended that was enough. The next day, Caleb drove into town to meet with his supervisor. The warehouse smelled like dust and cardboard and the faint sweetness of shrink wrap. Familiar. Grounding. His supervisor, a woman named Denise, met him in a small office near the loading docks. She looked at his application on the screen. "You finally decided to go for it." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Figured it was time." She studied him. "You have the experience, you know the system. But this job means responsibility, scheduling, problem solving. People complaining to you all day. He nodded. I can handle that. She raised an eyebrow. You sure? He thought about the fence, the bills. Ryan's tired eyes. Yeah. She leaned back. We will run interviews next week, no promises, I know. He left with a knot in his stomach that felt a lot like hope and fear twisted together. When he got back to Ryan's house, a white envelope was taped to the front door. Melissa stood in the entryway, staring at it like it might bite. Ryan was on the phone in the living room, voice low and urgent. Caleb closed the door behind him. Everything okay? Melissa peeled the envelope off slowly. Probably just more paperwork, she said, but her voice was thin. She opened it at the kitchen counter. Her eyes moved across the page. She did not speak. Caleb felt his own pulse in his throat. Ryan came in, phone still in hand. What is it? Melissa handed him the letter. Ryan read it, jaw tightening. He thanked the person on the phone quickly and hung up. It is a notice, he said quietly. Melissa sank into a chair. How long? 30 days. Caleb felt the room tilt. 30 days? Until what? Ryan looked at him. Until they start the next steps. No one said the word. But it hung there anyway. That night no one watched television. Ryan sat at the dining table with his laptop and a stack of papers, making calls, leaving messages, waiting on hold. Melissa moved between rooms like she had lost something small and important and could not remember where she put it. Caleb sat on the couch, hands clasped, feeling useless. Then he stood. What can I do? Ryan did not look up. Nothing, man. Caleb stepped closer. There has to be something. Ryan finally looked at him. You being here and not falling apart is already helping. Caleb did not feel like that was true, but he stayed. The next morning, he woke before his alarm and went downstairs to find Ryan asleep at the table, head on folded arms, laptop still open. A spreadsheet filled the screen. Columns of numbers, red and black. Caleb gently closed the laptop halfway and put a blanket from the couch over Ryan's shoulders. Ryan did not wake. Caleb stood there a long moment. Then he went outside and tightened the last screw on the fence hinge, just to feel something hold. Morning light crept across the kitchen floor in pale stripes. Melissa stood at the counter with a mug she had not touched, staring at the wall like it might give her instructions. Ryan rubbed his face and checked his phone again. No new messages. Caleb sat at the table with a notepad he found in the junk drawer. The paper was covered in quick, messy handwriting. Numbers, deadlines, names of banks and phone numbers Ryan had scribbled down overnight. Caleb tapped the pen against the page. What if you rented out the basement? He said quietly. Ryan looked up, tired eyes slow to focus. What? The basement. It has a couch, a bathroom. You could clean it up, list it short-term or long-term. Melissa blinked. We talked about that last year. Ryan shook his head. The city has rules, permits, insurance. Caleb shrugged. Still worth checking again. Ryan did not argue. He just looked back down at the table, but Caleb saw the thought land. Later that morning, Caleb drove to the hardware store and bought a new latch for the side gate with his own money. $10 and change. When he got back, he replaced the broken one without saying anything. Melissa noticed when she took the trash out. You did not have to keep fixing things, she said. He wiped his hands on his jeans. Feels better than sitting. She nodded. Yeah. That afternoon, Ryan had a meeting with a lender. He left in a button-down shirt that still had fold lines from the packaging. Melissa paced the living room while he was gone. Caleb sat on the floor with a screwdriver, tightening the loose leg on a coffee table that wobbled. At one point, Melissa stopped pacing. I used to be good with money, she said suddenly. Caleb looked up. I mean, really good. Spreadsheets, budgets. I helped my parents pay off their house early. He listened. Then the business took off and we started thinking in months instead of years. She laughed softly, bitter. Turns out months can disappear fast. Caleb set the screwdriver down. My problem was the opposite. She looked at him. I never thought far enough ahead. They held each other's gaze for a second. Two different mistakes. Same feeling. Ryan came home just before dinner. He did not have to say anything. His shoulders said it. He dropped his keys in the bowl by the door and stood still like he had forgotten why he came in. Melissa walked over slowly. Well, he shook his head once. They want more paperwork, more proof, more time than we have. Melissa closed her eyes. Caleb stayed where he was. Ryan looked at him then, almost apologetic. Sorry you have to see this. Caleb shook his head. I'm glad I do. Ryan gave a tired half smile. We will figure something out. It did not sound convincing. At night, Caleb lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. His mind ran in circles. Then it landed on something small. He grabbed his phone and opened a local community board app. He had used it once to sell an old bike. He typed slowly. Handyman help, minor repairs, fence panels, loose fixtures, yard cleanup, affordable rates. He stared at the words. Then he hit post. The next morning, he almost forgot about it. Until his phone buzzed. A message from someone 3 streets over asking if he could fix a sagging shed door. Caleb stared at the screen. It felt ridiculous. It also felt like oxygen. He replied yes. He told Melissa where he was going. She blinked. You do that kind of work. I guess I do now. She smiled faintly. Be careful with pricing. Do not undercharge yourself. He nodded. The shed job took an hour and a half. He replaced 2 hinges and tightened the frame. The man handed him $40 in cash. Caleb held the bills in his hand like they might vanish. It was not life-changing, but it was something he made that did not come from a paycheck or a loan or luck. When he got back, he put the cash in a jar on the kitchen counter. What is that? Ryan asked. Caleb shrugged. Fence fund. Ryan frowned. What fence? Caleb smiled a little. The one we are not letting fall down. Ryan looked at the jar for a long second. Then he went to his wallet and added 20. Melissa watched from the sink. She did not say anything, but her eyes looked different. That night they ate spaghetti at the table. No television, no pretending, just tired people chewing and thinking. At one point, Ryan said, I might need to sell the car. Melissa nodded like she already knew. Caleb said, I can take extra shifts. Ryan looked at him. You do not have to fix this. Caleb met his eyes. I know, that was the difference now. No one was pretending one person could save everyone. They were just not looking away anymore. Later, Caleb sat on the back steps with his phone, scrolling through the community board. Another message. Someone needed help clearing branches after a storm. He typed back. Yes. Inside the house, through the window, he saw Ryan and Melissa at the table again. Not arguing. Just sitting close, shoulders touching, looking at a screen together. Scared. But together. Caleb looked down at his hands. Calloused, dirty under the nails. Useful. For the first time in a long time, that felt like enough for tonight. The branch job turned into 3 more small requests by the end of the week. A loose mailbox post. A door that would not close all the way. A woman who just needed someone tall enough to change a hard-to-reach light bulb. None of it paid much. But each time Caleb came back with a little cash folded in his pocket, he felt something inside him sit up straighter. Ryan noticed. You are getting popular, he said one evening, watching Caleb count small bills at the kitchen table. Caleb shrugged. People always have little things they cannot fix. Melissa leaned against the counter. You should make a simple flyer. Put it at the grocery store board. Caleb blinked. You think? She nodded. Simple. Clear. Phone number big. He smiled. Okay. They made the flyer together on the laptop. Black letters. No fancy words. reliable help for small home repairs. Ryan printed 10 copies at the office the next day. It felt strange seeing his name on paper like that. Like he was someone who showed up. Midweek, Caleb got a call from Denise at the warehouse. She asked if he could come in Friday for a formal interview. His stomach flipped. Yeah, of course. After he hung up, he just stood there in the backyard, phone still in his hand. Melissa saw his face through the window and came outside. "Good news, interview," he said. Her smile this time reached her eyes. "See, momentum." He nodded, trying not to let hope run too far ahead. Inside, Ryan overheard and clapped him on the shoulder. "Proud of you." 2 words Caleb did not realize he had been starving for. Friday morning, he borrowed one of Ryan's button-down shirts. It was a little tight in the shoulders, but clean. Before he left, Melissa adjusted the collar like she had done it 100 times for someone else. "You look good," she said. He swallowed. "Thanks." The interview was not dramatic, just questions. How would you handle a delayed shipment? How would you deal with a team member who keeps showing up late? Caleb answered honestly. "I used to be that guy," he said at one point. Denise raised an eyebrow. What changed? He thought of the fence, the jar, the letter on the door. "I got tired of being the reason things fell behind." She nodded slowly. When he left, nothing was decided. But he had not stumbled over his words. He had not looked at the floor. That night, Ryan and Melissa were quieter than usual. A second letter had come in the mail, more dates, more numbers, less time. They sat at the table after dinner, hands wrapped around mugs that had gone cold. Caleb placed the jar of small repair money in the center. It was not much, but it was something solid. Ryan stared at it. "You do not have to do this," Caleb said. "I know." Melissa reached out and touched the jar like it might break. "We will pay you back," she said automatically. Caleb shook his head. "That's not the point." She looked at him, eyes glossy. "Then what is?" He thought for a second. "So none of us feel alone in this." No one argued. The next morning, Caleb was up before sunrise, loading fallen branches into the back of his car for another job. The sky was pale pink over the rooftops, cold air in his lungs. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a message from Denise. "Call me when you can." His heart started pounding so hard he had to lean against the car. He called. She picked up on the second ring. "You still interested in that coordinator role?" "Yes." "Good, because we would like to offer it to you." "Training starts in 2 weeks." Caleb closed his eyes. "Thank you," his voice came out rough. "We will send the paperwork today," she said. He hung up and just stood there, forehead resting against the cold metal of the car. Not a miracle, but a step, a real one. When he walked back inside, Melissa looked up from the sink. What happened? He could not stop smiling. "I got it." She covered her mouth with her hand. Ryan came in from the living room. "Got what?" "The job." For a second, no one moved. Then Ryan pulled him into a hug so tight it hurt. "Proud of you," he said again, voice thick. Melissa joined, arms around both of them. It was not loud, not wild, just 3 tired people holding on. Later that day, Ryan made another round of calls. Still no guarantees. Still numbers that did not bend easily. But when he hung up this time, he looked at Caleb differently. Not like a weight, like a teammate. That night, Caleb lay in the guest bed, staring at the ceiling again. Same room, same house, different chest. The future was still uncertain. The house might still be lost. Bills would still come. But he was not drifting anymore. He was moving, slow, imperfect, forward. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough to let him sleep. Sleep came deeper that night. Not dreamless, but steady. Caleb woke before his alarm again, but this time his chest did not feel like it was being sat on. He lay there a moment, staring at the faint morning light on the ceiling, letting the quiet settle around him. Downstairs, he heard the low murmur of Ryan's voice on the phone, not sharp, not desperate, just tired and determined. Caleb dressed and went to the kitchen. Melissa stood at the stove, stirring oatmeal, real breakfast, not just coffee and stress. She glanced at him. Morning. Morning. Ryan ended his call and rubbed his eyes. They offered a short extension, he said, not much, but something. Melissa let out a slow breath. How long? A few more weeks. It was not safety, but it was time. Caleb poured coffee and leaned against the counter. I start training in 2 weeks, he said. Ryan nodded. That will help. They all knew it would not fix everything, but it changed the slope of the road ahead. After breakfast, Caleb headed out for another small job, this time helping an elderly woman replace a broken porch step. She insisted on paying him with exact change and 2 homemade cookies wrapped in foil. He drove back, smiling at the absurdity of it. Money from cookies and loose screws still counted. When he pulled into the driveway, Ryan was sitting on the front steps, elbows on knees, staring at the street. You okay? Ryan nodded without looking up, just thinking about everything. Caleb sat beside him. For a while, they just watched a neighbor walk a dog that refused to go in a straight line. I always thought I had to be the one who had it together, Ryan said finally. You usually were. Yeah, he gave a tired laugh. But I never let anyone see the cracks until they were already breaks. Caleb picked at a loose thread on his jeans. I did the opposite. Ryan glanced at him. Showed all the cracks. Yeah, they sat with that. Maybe there is a middle, Ryan said. Maybe. Inside, Melissa was on the phone again, but this time her voice was calmer, focused, practical. Numbers still mattered, but panic did not have the same grip. That evening, Caleb checked the community board again. More messages, small things, a loose cabinet hinge, a yard sign that needed to be dug out and replaced, work that made his arms sore in a good way. He wrote each one down in the notepad on the counter. Melissa added dates beside them, organizing. Ryan circled the ones closest together on a map app, a quiet system forming. One night, a week later, the 3 of them sat at the table going over numbers again. Not to fight, to plan. If we sell the second car, Melissa said, we can cover another month. Ryan nodded. And if I close that condo deal, that buys us breathing room. Caleb tapped the jar on the table. I will keep this going. Ryan looked at him. I know. That meant more than the words. Later, Caleb went upstairs and opened his email. Paperwork from the warehouse, health insurance forms, training schedule. He read each line carefully. Responsibility had a weight, but it was a weight he could carry. He lay back on the bed, phone on his chest, staring at the ceiling. The house still might not be theirs in a few months. Life was not fixed. But something inside him was. He was no longer the guy waiting for rescue. He was part of the effort, part of the load, part of the repair. Downstairs, he heard Ryan laugh softly at something Melissa said. Not a forced laugh, a real one. Caleb closed his eyes. For now, that sound was enough, and in the quiet dark, with uncertainty still ahead, but purpose finally under his feet, Caleb let himself believe that sometimes progress did not look like winning. Sometimes it just looked like not giving up. A few days later, a for sale sign appeared 2 houses down. Caleb noticed it while loading branches into the back of his car. The bright plastic felt louder than it should have been. Change was moving through the neighborhood whether people were ready or not. When he went inside, Ryan was on the phone again, pacing the living room. This time his voice was steadier, not hopeful, not defeated, just working the problem. Melissa sat at the table with her laptop, headphones on, editing product photos for her online shop. The glow from the screen lit her face in soft blue. Normal tasks. Life continuing inside the storm. Caleb grabbed a granola bar from the pantry and checked his list of small jobs for the day. 3 stops, a leaky outdoor faucet, a sagging closet rod, a fence gate that would not latch. None of them would change the world, but they were things he could make better with his hands. By late afternoon, his shoulders burned and his jeans were dusted with dirt and sawdust. He drove home tired in a clean way. Inside, Melissa was at the sink again. "How was the day?" "Productive," he said. She smiled faintly. "I sold 2 jackets." "Nice." She dried her hands. "Feels good, does it not?" "Yeah, to earn something." They shared a look that did not need more words. That evening, Ryan came home with a small stack of printed papers. He set them on the table. "Options," he said. "Refinance if the extension holds. Sell if it does not." Melissa nodded slowly. Caleb sat across from them listening. No one asked him to leave the room. No one lowered their voice. They talked through numbers out loud, interest rates, fees, timelines. Scary things became less sharp when spoken in plain language. At one point, Ryan looked at Caleb. "You still sure about staying a bit longer?" Caleb nodded. "Yeah." Ryan held his gaze. "Thank you." Caleb shrugged. "We are all just trying not to drown." Melissa reached across and squeezed his hand once before going back to her keyboard. Later that night, Caleb lay in bed, muscles aching. His phone buzzed. A message from Denise reminding him about orientation details. Start time, dress code, who to report to, real steps. He stared at the screen in the dark. For years, his life had felt like waiting rooms. Waiting for the next paycheck. Waiting for the next crisis. Waiting for someone else to decide something. Now, there was a schedule with his name on it. He set the phone down and exhaled slowly. The next weekend, Caleb helped Ryan clear out more of the basement. Old boxes went into piles. Keep, donate, trash. They found a photo album at the bottom of one bin. Ryan flipped it open and laughed softly. 2 skinny boys in oversized clothes grinning at a cheap birthday cake. "Mom made everything look bigger than it was," Ryan said. Caleb leaned over his shoulder. "She was good at that." Ryan closed the album gently. "We will figure this out," he said. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet promise. Upstairs, Melissa was on the phone with a customer, voice calm and professional. "Yes, I can ship that tomorrow." Life refusing to pause. That evening, the 3 of them ate on the back porch, wrapped in hoodies against the cool air. The repaired fence stood straight behind them. Ryan leaned back in his chair. "You know," he said, "if we do end up selling, it will not be the end." Melissa nodded. "Just a different chapter." Caleb looked at the yard. Grass needed trimming. Leaves gathering in the corners. A place they had lived real days in. Homes were wood and paint and loans, but also late-night talks and broken bowls and shared coffee. He said nothing. Just listened. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky pale orange. For a moment, everything was still. Not solved, not certain, but shared. And in that shared quiet, Caleb felt something settle deep in his chest. Not pride, not relief, something steadier. Belonging earned, not borrowed. Inside later, he checked the jar on the counter. More bills folded inside. Ryan had added some. Melissa, too. It was not about the amount, it was about the direction. Forward. Together. Upstairs, Caleb lay down and turned off the lamp. Through the wall, he heard Ryan and Melissa talking softly. No sharp edges. No blame, just planning. Caleb stared at the ceiling one more time. The house might still be lost. Money might still be tight. Nothing was guaranteed. But he was no longer the guy people spoke about in lowered voices. He was in the room. Hands dirty, shoulders sore, part of the load. And as sleep pulled him under, Caleb understood something simple and solid. Sometimes the win is not keeping everything. Sometimes the win is becoming someone who can build again if you have to. 2 weeks passed faster than Caleb expected. Days filled themselves with small jobs, paperwork, phone calls, and quiet meals that tasted more like effort than food. The jar on the counter grew heavier. Not impressive, but honest. On Caleb's last evening before starting training at the warehouse, the three of them sat at the kitchen table with takeout containers spread between stacks of documents. Ryan had just gotten off another call. "We are not safe yet," he said, rubbing his eyes. "But we are not falling off the cliff tomorrow either." Melissa let out a long breath she had been holding all day. "Okay." Caleb nodded. "Okay." No one celebrated. They just ate. Later, Caleb stepped outside alone. The repaired fence stood firm against the dark yard. The loose gate latch clicked cleanly into place when he tested it. Small things that held. Inside, through the kitchen window, he saw Ryan and Melissa shoulder to shoulder at the table again. Not arguing. Not pretending, just working. He went back upstairs and packed his bag for the first day of training. Clean shirt, notebook, pen. He paused, looking around the guest room. It had stopped feeling temporary, not because he owned it, because he had done something inside it besides hide. The next morning came early. Melissa handed him a travel mug at the door. Ryan clapped him on the back. "Go get it, man." Caleb stepped out into the cold air, breath fogging. His car still needed new brakes. His bank account was still thin. His brother's house was still on a fragile timeline, but his feet felt different on the pavement. He was not leaving to escape. He was leaving to build. At the warehouse, the training room smelled like dry erase markers and burnt coffee. A handful of other workers sat in folding chairs, some nervous, some bored. Caleb took a seat, notebook on his lap. When Denise walked in and started talking about schedules and systems, Caleb listened like someone who finally understood the cost of not paying attention. Hours later, on his lunch break, he checked his phone. A message from Ryan. Met with the lender again. Still pushing. Thanks for the fence fund idea. It helped more than you think. Another from Melissa. Sold out of one item. Small win. Proud of you today. Caleb stared at the screen. He did not answer right away. He just let the words settle. Back in the training room, he raised his hand to ask a question. His voice did not shake. That night, he drove back to the house under a sky turning deep blue. The porch light was on. Ryan's car in the driveway. Melissa's laughter drifted faintly through the door before he even stepped inside. They looked up when he walked in. "How was it?" Ryan asked. "Good," Caleb said. "Hard, but good." Melissa smiled. "That sounds right." They ate leftovers at the counter, nothing fancy, nothing certain, but no one was pretending anymore. Later, Caleb stood at the kitchen sink rinsing his plate. He looked at his reflection in the dark window over the sink. Still tired, still a little worn, but steadier, not a before picture anymore. Just a man in the middle of the work. Behind him, Ryan and Melissa talked quietly about a call scheduled for the next morning. Deadlines still existed. Numbers still mattered, but so did effort, so did showing up. Caleb dried his hands and turned off the light. As he headed upstairs, he paused by the back door and looked out at the fence one more time. Straight. Holding. He nodded once to himself. Not another Caleb situation. Just Caleb. Learning how to stay. If this story felt real to you, if you have ever been the one people quietly worried about, or the one trying to hold everything together, you are not alone. Sometimes change does not start with a big win. Sometimes it starts with one small decision to stop running and start showing up. If you believe people can grow even when life gets messy, stay with us. There are more stories like this. Stories about mistakes, second chances, and the quiet strength it takes to rebuild. Subscribe and come back for the next one. You might see a part of yourself in it.